Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We're so excited to have you here with us today. And we want you to know that we are here to serve you. We are a Christian counseling company, and we focus on helping you to strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community to know that you are not alone on your healing journey. Our team of counselors specialize in Bible-based trauma-informed care and grief counseling and a number of other things to help you get through painful events in your life. And I'm very excited to welcome to the show one of our very own counselors, Christian Taylor. He's a wonderful man of God. He has his BA in Religion and Theology. He has his MDiv in Chaplaincy, and he has a certification in 4 units of clinical pastoral education. He has an amazing spirit, and he has a passion for helping people to know God's love and to know that healing is possible. So I'm very excited to welcome Christian Taylor to the show. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Christian, we're so excited to have you here. I'm just loving having you on the team. You are so focused on helping people to experience God's healing. And I just wanted to have the opportunity for those who listen to the show to get to know who you really are. And so I would love for you to start off by just telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, your life growing up. So just share a little bit about you.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I say that to a lot of people. That's the first thing I say. I'm like, oh, I'm from Cleveland. But actually, I grew up my first half of my life in Huntsville, Alabama. And if you know anything about the two, they're totally different. I grew up in the city of Huntsville, but it was so much more slower. It was, you could leave your door open. And we could play outside all day, and my parents didn't even have to worry. I have 4 siblings as well. One of them is a twin. I'm actually a twin, if you didn't know. And so kind of growing up down there for the first maybe 11, 12 years of my life were it's quite enjoyable. I mean, it was just very relaxing. It was us. It was just, my mom, my dad, and 5 kids. And we were very much into the church, and so much of our life was revolved around the church. And so they really wanted us to grow up with a Christian identity and my name is Christian. And so even doubly, but just have this sense of connection with God. And I will tell you that I think that I would not be here today if it had not been for that kind of that upbringing and that type of focus that my parents had. The flip side of that is that, the home was a very hostile environment, though. And it had a lot to do with just my parents and their issues with each other. And it resulted in them separating. But the separation was like very, very dramatic because we were living in Huntsville, Alabama, but all of our family was up in Cleveland, Ohio. That's where my parents were from. That's where I was born. So when the split happened, that meant that I stayed down with my dad in Huntsville. My mom and all of my sister siblings went up to Cleveland, Ohio. I remember the day. Honestly, I remember the day because maybe a couple months prior, all of us were in a car, 5 kids jam-packed in a Honda Civic. and I remember my mom turning around and saying, if your dad and I split up, and mind you, at this time, I think maybe almost 11. If your dad and I split up, who do you want to go with? And I've never, as a child, never had to deal with such a conundrum. I mean, what are we asking? What are we choosing here? Who's better? Who do I favor more? It was a very hard and kind of a blow to what I thought was my reality. And so several months, it might have been a month or a year later, it actually happened, and bags were being packed. Van was being filled with different things. My sisters were getting put in the car, and my mom told me and my brothers. She said, "Do you want to go with me?" And I still had not found a resolution to the question. And so I'm just debating in my mind, what does it mean for the one parent if I say yes, and the other parent if I say no to them? And before long, I was in my room. I was talking to my brother. He's a couple years older. And I told him, I'm going. At that moment, I heard the car pulling out of the driveway and just headed north. And I don't know, that just, I like, as a kid, I just wish there was some like more time. I had finally made my decision and it was too late. And just dealing with the separation itself was just a lot. It was a lot. But I say that to say, because that was a big turning point for me, because I had this spiritual crisis. Up until then, this relationship with God was very, just kind of casual and just kind of what I knew. But now I had deep like wounds and needs, and I just didn't know where to get them from. My dad kind of went inside, and so there wasn't much I felt like I could get from him. In fact, I took on more of a caretaker type of role, almost maybe feeling bad for him in the situation. And so I kind of just, I didn't know what to do. And so I also did a lot inside of trying to figure out my own emotions and trying to figure out where God was in all of this. Because, I had learned the principles that my parents wanted me to learn regarding faith and hope and trust and those things. But, the reality of the current situation seemed to blow all that up. And from there, I think that's really where my spiritual journey took on a very intentional and meaningful form, whatever that form was. But I really struggled. I would categorize myself as a depressed child, just very not talkative, not really engaging in much activities. And so that from that point on, it just really led to years long conflict with my mom. Our relationship never really got to a place of healing or reconciliation. Even though there were many attempts, it just never worked. And but I did end up going back and moving back to Cleveland. My dad wanted to see his daughters as well, so we went back up. My parents never got back together. In fact, they several years later ended up divorcing, which at that, if most kids who come from that type of home, it's almost gets to the point where you're excited for the divorce now. It's like, just get it over with. But it was a huge challenge to now try to navigate the relationship with my mom, who I feel like we just really disconnected. She's stubborn, and I could be withdrawn. And so I wouldn't maybe communicate what I needed, and she wasn't really trying to hear anything, and so that really created a path where once I became a young adult, when I was 18, 19 years old, I just decided it was time for me to move out. But I did the wrong thing by moving out to move out from her house to move back in with my dad. And by now they're arch nemesis and, and enemies. And so that was really taken as a form of betrayal. And that further declined our relationship. And I guess I can really summarize that time with just saying that, I knew enough of God to know that he was one that I could talk to. And he was somebody that at least could listen, even if maybe I didn't hear him all the time talking back. At least I needed somebody who could listen. And I really felt him do that for me, honestly. As a teenager, as a young adult, I really felt like I had God's ear. And by default, I just being able to share and get those things out, it helped give me some sense of clarity for my life. And I really resolved at 19 years old, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something with my life. I'll also say I was homeschooled early on. And so after, so by the teenage years, I really wasn't homeschooled. In fact, I just dropped out of school. That's even where my depression went. I just dropped out of school. In fact, I worked like a full-time person at 15 years old at a restaurant. And I lied to the I lied to the manager and told him, since I'm homeschooled, I can work anytime and I'll do my schoolwork at night. And he took that. And so, and so I didn't do schoolwork at night. I just worked. That's all I did. And yeah.
It sounds like you had to have a lot of adult decisions at an early age. And that's very challenging. And so I'm curious as to what were some of the things that you did to help you to heal? Obviously, you talked about God and really honing in on that relationship. But what were some other things that you end up doing as you got older to help you to really deal with those childhood wounds?
Yeah, I found mentors. They were very, very helpful for me. And then and I'll talk about mentors just after this, but the other thing was, I did start counseling on my own. Like I just decided I needed it. I did grow up in the family, in the home where it was like, we don't tell anybody our business, and what happens in the house stays in the house. And so for a long time, I really held to that. I didn't want to embarrass my parents. I didn't want to share any of their stuff. But I had to come to the place where I realized this is also my story. And as much as I hide theirs, I'm also hiding mine and what's going on with me. And so I just, I decided, hey, I need to talk with somebody. And so I started going to counseling. I started getting really active in the church, and that spiritual growth was really helpful for me, just by helping other people in their spiritual walk, was really healing for me too. But also when it came to the mentors, one of my managers at my job, he really took to me. He trusted me. I mean, he would give me the keys to his car and give me a bag of money and tell me to drive to the bank. And even at the bank, they would look at me and they say, no, we can't accept this. This is not your money. Right. And now I'm also a manager at the bank too. I mean, at the restaurant, but he's the general manager. And honestly, it was because I was a Black person, a Black guy, young, 19 years old, where they were just like, we don't trust you. So he would literally call up to the bank and then chew them out. And sometimes would even come up to the bank and say, no, he has every right. His name is on this. You need to accept it. This was a white guy too. He was an atheist, actually. And it was like he really took to me. But one thing he did was he told me he wanted to promote me to be a general manager because he was moving into corporate. And so he put my name in a couple of times, and they kept coming back denied. Everybody at corporate and the store knew that I was the best employee. I was a hard worker, but they kept coming back denied. And he sat me down one day, and I thought he was actually going to tell me that I got the job. And he said, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this because you need to hear it. He said, you're not going to get promoted here. And I said, why? Like, what's wrong? He said two things. Number one, they don't want a Black person as the face of their store. And I know that hurts, but I need you to hear this. And number two, you're too young. You're the youngest person at this store. And so they worry that the people who are older will be jealous, and they'll have an issue and there'll be conflict. And so they're not going to promote you. But he told me this. He said, what is it that you were meant to do with your life? And I didn't know. And he said, you need to go figure that out. And in fact, you need to figure it out right away. And if you find out what it is, let me know. I'll help you, but you can't stay here. Yeah. And he was willing to actually fire me if I lingered too long. That's how much he believed in me, but he just didn't want me settling. And that really started my process of what is my purpose? What am I meant to do? What does God have for me? And then that's when God started speaking.
Wow. Ew, that's so interesting. That's good because sometimes there's doors that close. And obviously you were on this path, you're like trying to get promotion. And that sounds like a great thing, but that was not your
Yeah,
calling. That wasn't your
wasn't.
assignment. And
No.
so what led you to go down a path of becoming a chaplain? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So when God started whispering my name after this atheist started telling me that I need to find my purpose, when he started whispering my name, the thing he said was, I need you to study for ministry. I was at the time actually in the middle of speaking to a youth event at a church. And in the middle of the message, literally God just started talking to me. And I'm still speaking my message, but then I'm having a conversation with God at the same time. It was the weirdest thing. Uh, and it was just like what he said, I want you to study for this. I want you to study for ministry. And even now I reflect back on why he said that instead of just saying, hey, I want you to go be a minister. I want you to go pastor, right? He said, I want you to study. And that was crucial for me because that's the one thing I had not done since I had dropped out, is study. And so it was a challenge, but I believed it. I believed that this was now my purpose. And so within 2 months, I got my GED. I signed up for a college that was 600 miles away back in Huntsville, Alabama. I got out of the lease of my apartment and I drove. I drove down to school. I had to sleep in my car to even get financially able to join the school. But I did. And from there, it was just one blessing after another, and how God just confirmed more and more that this is exactly what he wants for me. And it was there at that college I learned about chaplaincy from a professor. He used to work at a psychiatric hospital and would address the spiritual and emotional needs of patients in ways that were really so profound for me, because some of them couldn't even communicate or correctly or intelligibly, but he would give them the space, give them the time, make them feel heard and understood. And sure enough, over time, their communication got better or their treatment process improved. And they spoke of the meaning and the impact that he had. And I said, I want to have an impact. I want to have an impact on people. And so, yeah, that led me down the path.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And as a chaplain, like fast forwarding, you became a chaplain, you're working in this field, you see a lot of suffering taking place. You've seen people sometimes at their last days or families who just lost a loved one. It's a lot of pain there. And this is almost kind of like a two-part question.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you learned while working in this role and around suffering specifically? And how does that relate to your theology of suffering as a child of God?
Yeah. I believe that suffering makes one wise, whether you are the one who is suffering or you're the one caring for someone who's suffering. But it offers a unique wisdom that honestly, I don't think you can get anywhere else. I've seen people go through intense suffering and their life sobers up in such a way where they get a grasp on that which is most meaningful in life. And all of that frivolous stuff, all of that trivial things, they just go by the wayside and they hone in on that which can take them to eternity. And that's from any type of denomination, any type of faith background. They want something that they can hold on to in the darkest hour. And so spending time with people who are suffering, it has taught me so much. I consider myself a student of those who suffer. And one thing I've learned that if you really want to know what your faith is made of, you need to go visit someone who's sick, someone who's struggling, someone who's suffering, because they have to wrestle with their faith in ways that we never have. And out of that comes a testing and a kind of a proving and a evidence of what really is your faith. And so a lot of us, I've met a lot of people and they've heard either a lot of sermons or they've sat under a lot of people. But one thing I've learned is we don't do as much of a job to help prepare people for the darkest part of life, to really help prepare them for that and prepare their faith, because in those moments we have almost taught them that, it's 100% guaranteed that God is going to just reverse that and you're going to be skipping out of it. But what happens when God just joins you in the suffering and says, I'm just going to be with you through this. And we're going to collect some nuggets, some treasures, and some gems, but this may not mean that you will experience physical healing.
Oh, that's tough right there.
Yeah.
And that's not what people want to hear,
Yeah.
because we have our idea of how things should look. And being able to be in the suffering while understanding that God is always with us. He was with his son, Jesus, on the cross. And so understanding that suffering will take place in our life, and it doesn't necessarily mean, in some cases, people think it's their fault, but suffering is not always as a result of something that you did. It's just, this is what life looks like. We are going to experience suffering, you know?
Yeah.
And I think about the story of Job comes to mind, how he had his friends who they started off when they visited him just being quiet and being present with them. But then things kind of went south and they started trying to give advice and telling him that he's the reason all this stuff happened. And I just wanted to ask you, since you have experience in doing this, if a friend or a loved one that you know is really having a difficult time and they're suffering, what is some advice that you can give that person who wants to support their loved one to be with their friend in that time of suffering?
Yeah. Number one, don't provide canned phrases, and people don't need those. They hit the ceiling and fall to the ground. If you don't have anything that to say, it's way better to say nothing at all. In fact, it may be the best thing that you can do instead of saying something. The other thing is, I love in Job chapter 6. He's already entered into that conversation with his friends. They've already kind of got tough on him. And he says something in Job 6. He says the words of, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'll put it in the New Christian version. He's saying that the words of the sufferer, the words of one in despair, are like the wind. God doesn't even hold those against a person like that. And so he's like, how are you going to try to, almost oppress me with your words because you think my words are the reason why this is happening to me? He says, no. God is able to listen to my words because of they're the words of the despairing. And so as a friend, as a loved one, don't judge the sufferer for what comes out of their pain. Don't judge them for that. Give them the room and the space to express their pain and their agony, just like Job was given 30 plus chapters. Like give them the space and the language, if you can, to give room for that pain to just be expressed. And honestly, the one thing I've learned, if you let people get out what's in, it allows them to draw closer and draw near that which is out and that they need. So if God is someone they need, then if they can get their expressions, their pain out, there's room for him to come in.
Amen. Yes. And I would love for you to speak to someone who's in their Job moment right now. If they're dealing with suffering, loss of health, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, whatever that is, what words of encouragement would you offer them today?
Your God is very much acquainted with the deep uncertainty, the agony, and the pain. Wherever your level of suffering is, God is there. He's been there. He's had to deal with it. And so he is an understanding God. And I just want you to know that if you ever think that in the midst of your suffering, and we can get pretty low, life can take us very, very low. Just know that God is not one who runs from difficult conversations. He's not one who gets angry and ready to zap you because you get angry at him. In fact, I paint the picture of a God who has big ears like an elephant, and he's willing to hear everything you have to say. And in fact, if you got some anger to come out, if you're upset with him right now, you feel like he's disappointed you and left you to rot, just know he's right there. And in fact, he's like, if you got some punches you need to get out, go ahead, beat on my chest while I hold you. And just picture God as that type of figure who will let you beat on his chest, who will let you cry on his chest as he wraps his arm around you and hold you and say, hey, I know you don't have all the answers now, but we can go through this together. That's what I would say. Your God is with you, and he is very much familiar with suffering.
Yes, yes, he is. Those are some words that I need to grab onto. I think we all needed to hear that. And because we focus on helping people to experience emotional healing in their life, I want you to also speak briefly to that in terms of God's ability to heal from those painful events. What do you know to be true about that, Christian?
I know that God is an emotional God as we are created in his image. And if God is an emotional God, if you read through scripture and you find yourself maybe thinking, okay, who is God? Well, he's the God who cries. He's the God who yearns and agonizes. He loves. He misses people. He tries to woo. He laughs. He is the God of emotions. And so just know that he understands the range of emotions that we can experience, but also he is a God of healing. In fact, I believe that the gospel itself, in its entirety, is really about healing in this life and the life to come. And so everything that you have seen Christ do for humanity, beyond the healings and everything, they were meant to bring some healing even to the emotional brokenness, even into the emotional situation you may be dealing with. And so there is hope. There is so much hope for you. And I know you want it. You may just not know how to do it. And I think that's why we're here. And that's why Faith on the Journey is here, because it's an opportunity for you to connect to people who's been on the journey themselves, but also who can walk with you and say, hey, we can get there. We can make some progress. We can walk together with God, almost like on the road to Emmaus, where Jesus is just quietly walking with two individuals. I think that's what we're inviting you into.
Yes, we are. And that's a perfect segue into just talking about why you became a Christian counselor. Why were you so excited to join the Faith on the Journey team?
Yeah, never heard of a trauma healing guide before, but I love the term and the way that the meaning behind it and the definition of it. And for me, joining this gets me excited because it gives an opportunity for people, I think, from a very spiritual perspective, a chance to merge their faith with some psychosocial and behavioral methods that will really do dual work, not just emotional healing, which is going to happen, I think, which it can happen, but to grow in faith at the same time, for our eyes to have the scales taken off and we can actually see God working and put him to the test. Is he who he says he is? And so I love helping to connect people spiritually. I love having to walk with people in through those traumatic journeys and pathways and finding where the light switch is in the darkness. Where's the light switch? I won't turn it on for you, but I'll be there to help you find it.
Yes, yes. And if you've all heard that term trauma healing guide for the first time, don't worry. That's the term that we use to refer to our counselors, because they're walking with you to help you to heal from a traumatic event in your life, to maybe from grief and loss, anything that was really painful. You have someone who's journeying with you. Yeah. And as Christian mentioned, no one is exempt from feeling pain or have experiencing trauma. And so our trauma healing guides, they're familiar with suffering in difficult times. And so they can relate to some of the experiences that you might have gone through. And so Christian, it's been such an amazing interview. I wish we had more time, but is there any final remarks that you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I firmly believe that healing happens in community. And it's mainly because we were made as communal beings. We were made to have brothers and sisters in our neighborhood, and we're made to have brothers and sisters in Christ. And because of that, there has to be more than just a one come alongside individual. That really, this is about influence a community to be healing, a community around you and a community around me. And so I firmly believe that we get connected to healing environments, spaces, community, that God can do amazing things.
Amen. And yes, he will. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just so blessed by our conversation today, Christian. And I know our
Thank you.
audience has been as well. And if you all like to learn more about Christian, if you want to connect with Christian as your counselor, please visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, faithonthejourney.org. And he'll be happy to meet with you and walk along with you on your journey. But Christian, thank you so much again for being here with us today. You have truly been a blessing.
Thank you for having me.
So that's it for today's broadcast, family. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please help us to get this word out to other people by sharing today's episode and also leaving a review. Also, I encourage you to visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that's faithonthejourney.org to explore all of the resources that are available for you. So that's it for now. We look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon.